Hello friends, this is Worm, and it's Monday, which means it's time for another episode of Exotic Recrafting, the series where we take a look at weak, underused, or straight up bad exotics in Destiny 2, talk about how we can make them better. I do apologize for my voice, still having allergy issues, but today I am very excited for the weapon that we're going to talk about today, because this weapon, I think many long-term players would agree, is not a bad weapon. In fact, it is a very good weapon. It is a very strong weapon. It has a lot of potential behind it, but that potential is kind of locked behind a very niche usage, right? And the weapon that we're talking about today is Riskrunner, if you couldn't tell by the background footage. But Riskrunner, of course, is an ARC SMG exotic. It's again, it's a very strong weapon, and it's one of the original trinities, right? Like the original trinity from D1. You know, your Arc Solar Void weapons, all ad clear, Sunshot, Graviton Lance, and of course Riskrunner here. But with that being said, Riskrunner, I want to talk about what it does first, and I want to talk about some of its strengths and weaknesses before we actually get into how we can change it. Because again, this is a weapon that is very strong in its current state. It's a powerful weapon. I do not want to understate that, but it's very, very niche. So its exotic perk is called Arc Conductor, and it states when taking arc damage, this weapon becomes more powerful and resists incoming arc damage. Kills extend the time in this overcharged state. It also has a unique perk called Superconductor. Superconductor states when Arc Conductor is active, shots fired have the chance to become chain lightning and return ammo back to the magazine. So just a brief summary of this. When you take any sort of arc damage, whether it's in the Crucible, whether it's from the environment, whether it's from enemies, explosives, direct shots, anything like that, melees, anything that deals arc damage will activate Arc Conductor for 5 seconds. And for that 5 seconds, as long as you are, as long as you're getting kills and you can refresh that timer, you will have about 50% arc damage reduction. That's the number I could find. I couldn't get a great testing number. It's difficult to test that. But from what I found online, it's about 50% arc damage reduction, which is a tremendous amount of damage reduction, mind you. You also get a 10% damage buff to the weapon. So the weapon has flat out just 10% more damage while Arc Conductor is active. It will also, of course, reload the weapon, which is really nice, especially on an SMG. You can just lay on that trigger basically forever. And of course it chains lightning, and it chains lightning every 25th roughly bullet. I didn't do exact testing because it only really activates when you're going full auto with it, but it seems to be about every 25th, somewhere 25th and 30th bullet, somewhere in there. Of course, why is it a great weapon? Pretty simply, it's great for ad clear. I mean, that's what the original trinity all does well. Sunshot, Graviton Lance, and of course this weapon, they all do this very, very well. Not only that, but you have minimal reloads while Arc Conductor is active. Actually you have no reloads while Arc Conductor is active. You get that arc damage resistance, which is tremendous, especially in strikes like this week's Nightfall, which is the Saber Strike. Lots of arc damage coming in, so it just cuts that damage down by 50%. Stack that with things like Woven Mail, stack it with tier 10 resilience, and you've got yourself a bunch of damage resistance. But the weapon also has some weaknesses, and in my opinion, the weaknesses really outshine the strengths of the weapon, and that's why we don't see it a whole lot inside of the current meta. The pivotal weakness that really sets this weapon apart from all these other great ad clear options is the fact that you have to take arc damage. Okay, that's the big caveat. If you can't take arc damage, whether there's no arc dealing enemies, whether there is, you're just not getting hits by arc damage, the enemies are concentrated on teammate or something like that. If you don't have Arc Conductor active, this is a subpar SMG. It's not a good SMG. It has a very slow reload time. It has extended mag. Its stats are just kind of okay. The Catalyst gives it a bunch of range, but that's it. Its stability, not the greatest. It's a mid-tier / low tier SMG when Arc Conductor is not active. And unfortunately, in the current state of the game, I would say you're missing out on probably 65, maybe 70% of content, because roughly 65 to 70% of enemies don't deal arc damage. In fact, if you're in a strike with, for example, Vex, or any content with Vex in it, Vex deal primarily solar damage and a little bit of void damage. And yes, there are some Vex that deal arc damage, and Radiolaria deals arc damage, but these are very few and far between. most Vex are dealing solar damage or void damage, so you're not going to get any value out of that arc damage resistance, right? But you're also not going to be able to proc Arc Conductor so that you can get the damage boost, the chain lightning, all that other stuff. Now, another weakness of this weapon is that timer. That timer is 5 seconds long. And that timer is really, really sad. When Destiny 2 first launched years ago, there's an argument for why it was better back then, but now 5 seconds is it's way too short to get anything done. And especially as you climb up in content difficulty, going from regular strikes, regular content, all the way up through Grandmaster, you are going to struggle a lot to get kills with this, because 5 seconds is not enough time to reliably chain the arc damage over and over. It also does not reactivates when you take additional arc damage, which we're going to talk about that in a second. And of course, the last weakness is that it only protects from arc damage. So again, you go back to that example we used earlier where you're up against Vex, for example, and you do happen to have a Fanatic explode near you, step in the pool of goo, whatever, you get Arc Conductor going. There's nothing else that is going to, like, all the incoming damage that Solar and Void is not going to get any resistance, right? Like, yeah, you'll have Arc Conductor going, so you got 10% more damage, the Chain Lightning and stuff like that, but you're not being protected from any of the other elements. So the problem with Riskrunner is that it's way too niche, and I hope that I just kind of reveal that. So let's talk about how we can fix it. And the first thing that I want to talk about is the synergy with the Arc subclass. And this is similar to Trinity Ghoul, which we haven't done an episode on Trinity Ghoul because I think Trinity Ghoul is an absolutely amazing weapon. But just like with Trinity Ghoul, Riskrunner does not synergize with the Arc subclass. Nothing is considered Jolt. The Chain Lightning is not, Arc Chain Lightning. Like, it's Arc Damage Chain Lightning, but it's not the same Chain Lightning as you would find in the Arc subclass and stuff like that. And so allowing it to some way synergize with Arc 3.0 would be a tremendous change to this weapon. And one of the best ways I could see it happening is when Arc Conductor is active, anytime you would proc that Chain Lightning, instead of procking the Chain Lightning, just make it Jolt. Just make it Jolt enemies, and that would be good, because Jolt, when the Chain Lightning happens, that's a one-time instant. Jolt, of course, once you apply it to an enemy, it stays active for like 5-7 seconds, something like that, and you can continuously damage them to shock other enemies around them. Like, I think that would be just the best change. It would technically reduce the damage of Riskrunner by a little bit, because the Chain Lightning, again, since it's not Jolt, it's dealing a little bit more damage than what Jolt would, but still it would allow for players to synergize with Arc subclass. You could tie it into Spark of Ions, for example. Defeating a jolted target spawns an Ionic Trace or something like that. And so just allowing it to synergize better with the Arc subclass, I think, would be a tremendous way to improve the weapon. And we have another thing that's going to improve it, but we're going to talk about that in just a second. But yeah, that's the first idea I have. Very simple, very easy, easy to say, easy to do. I'm not really sure about, because I'm not a developer. But moving on from there, my second idea was have additional ways to become an Arc Conductor. Currently, the only way that you can get Arc Conductor active is, of course, if you're taking arc damage. And again, we used this example earlier several times. If you're in, say, a Vex related content like this season, where everything's doing solar and void, you're not going to be having a whole lot of arc damage coming your way. So we need to have additional ways to become an Arc Conductor. And in my opinion, the best way to do this is simply by picking up an Ionic Trace. When you pick up an Ionic Trace, and again, this would tie into the subclass synergy as well. When you pick up an Ionic Trace, it will make you an Arc Conductor. That's the easiest way to do it, in my opinion. And I don't think that's crazy or too much to ask for. If you want to really build into it, you'd have to dedicate fragments and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, it would allow players, who are in Vex related content or content where there's very little arc damage, to still activate Arc Conductor relatively easy. Like, I don't want to say it's going to be just a cakewalk. I mean, I guess some people could argue that, but I think that having Riskrunner out, and you could make it go a step further and say Riskrunner has to be in your hands. Like, you actively have to be holding it, not stowed, but you have to actually be holding it in your hands. And while you're holding it in your hands, then when you pick up an Ionic Trace, it'll make you an Arc Conductor. Now, there's also the idea of the charge bar. Things like we see on Taraba, things like we see on Centrifuge and stuff like that, where getting X amount of kills or dealing damage or doing certain things will charge up that bar. And this idea, it's it's an idea. I don't think it's necessarily the best one, because of course we do have Centrifuge, which is also an arc exotic weapon, fully automatic arc exotic weapon. So I think that if we go too much into that whole charge bar, like we could potentially be stepping on Centrifuge, which I don't want to do. Like Centrifuge has its own identity, you know, sprinting and dealing damage and shooting the weapon in general charges that bar up. So maybe something a little bit more simple, maybe just getting arc kills or getting kills with Riskrunner will charge up that, you know, that arc conductor. Once you get 4 kills, 6 kills, whatever Bungie wants it to be, then boom, you've got arc conductor going and you can, you know, clear house, do whatever. So I think that would be a great change to have come to the weapon, again, to make it more viable in content that's doesn't have much arc damage. But moving on to the last one here, arc conductor itself, I mean, the duration is too short. Okay, the duration is super short, so we need to either extend the duration so it's longer, or have a way to maybe slow that duration down. Obviously, I think the easiest thing Bungie could do, change the timer from a 5-second timer to a 7 or 8-second timer. I'd say 8 seconds, probably pretty good. Push it up to 10. 10 would be the max. I think any more than 10 and you're just, okay, that's just doing too much. But increasing that timer will especially help us in high level content, things like Grandmasters, where it takes a long time to kill an enemy. It takes, you know, maybe 3 seconds to kill a red bar with an SMG. Then you have to run to another red bar, you know, you only have 2 seconds, blah, blah, you know, you can't chain it as easily, but increasing that timer can make it easier to chain those kills and keep arc conductor going. That way, you know, once you have it, you can much more efficiently keep it going. Now, I also think that a really cool idea, again, to build into the arc subclass, because arc synergy is, arc, in my opinion, is one of the most synergistic subclasses in the game. And I think another way to build into the arc synergy is have it so that while arc conductor is active, arc ability kills will extend the duration of allergies, I'm about to sneeze, will extend the duration of arc conductor. So, you know, let's say you throw a grenade out, you get a kill, doesn't activate arc conductor, but you take damage, or you say pick up an ionic trace, for example, you know, in our previous fix for the weapon, pick up an ionic trace, you become an arc conductor, then your arc conductor can go and go and go. Let's say you get a higher health target, so now you can throw a grenade at them, and if that grenade kills that target, then it will extend the duration of your arc conductor. I think that would be a really easy change to make, and I think that would also, again, it would build into the whole arc ability spam kind of situation, you know, help extend the duration of it, you know, stuff like that. But again, very important, arc ability kills would not activate arc conductor. It would only extend arc conductor. But finally, this is the last one, and this is such a minor change, and it's so weird that Bungie hasn't done this yet. But arc conductor, as soon as you take arc damage, that timer has to fully count out before it will reproc, unless you're getting kills. And one of the, like, a super easy change to make here is just have it so that anytime you take arc damage, it resets the timer. That way, if you're in Saber Strike, this week's Nightfall, for example, and you're constantly taking arc damage, you never have to worry about the timer running out. You never have to worry about getting additional kills. Like, you can just literally lay into, you know, that annoying overload captain, for example, you know, and constantly be damaging him, jolting, shocking enemies around him and stuff like that. Like, I don't know why the timer doesn't reset when you take additional arc damage. It only resets when you get kills, and I think that should be changed. I think that anytime you take arc damage, it should reset your timer for arc conductor. But yeah, with that being said, though, those are my ideas to fix Riskrunner. Again, Riskrunner, I won't sit here and say it's a bad weapon. I won't sit here and argue with people that it's, you know, a weak weapon. Even it's a very strong weapon. It's just, it's too niche. You have to have arc damage, you know, reliably arc damage. You know, you can technically self damage, you know, with an arc grenade, for example, but at the same time, like, who wants to do that, right? But I want to hear your thoughts on Riskrunner. Like, you know, how do you think it could be fixed? Do you like my ideas? Tell me all that stuff in the comments. Of course, if you like today's video, do me a favor, drop a like, helps the channel out a lot. Subscribe for more daily Destiny content, conversations, discussions, debate, all that good stuff. And yeah, do me another favor, watch the videos you see here on the end screen, because for whatever reason, YouTube thinks you'll like them. We'll see you on the next one, guys. Bye for now.